Two identical girls sweep the sidewalk of a luxurious mansion in the morning cold. The stepmother watches from afar, demanding, while masking cruelty with elegance and controlled smiles. But something unexpected happens. The millionaire father, absent for weeks, returns unannounced. What he does is shocking. The sun had not yet risen when Olivia and Chiara, identical 7-year-old twins, were awakened by the sound of firm footsteps in the marble hallway. It was Helena, in her silk robe and with her hair perfectly styled, who opened the bedroom door without knocking. Number 1 and number 2, it's already 5 in the morning. While your father is away, you know the rules. The girls jumped out of bed as if they'd received an electric shock. Olivia, whom Helena insisted on calling number 1, picked up the clothes folded on the dresser, a thin white dress, unsuitable for the cold morning that was approaching. Chiara, or number 2, glanced briefly at the window where the fog obscured the garden of the mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood of the capital. You have until 10 to finish today's list. If there's a single mistake, Helena said, lowering her voice to a whisper that seemed to cut through the air, I'll go without breakfast. Again. The to-do list lay on the bedside table. Sweep the outside sidewalk, organize the bookcase by color and size, fold all the towels in the main closet, clean the mirrors in the main hall and wash the dining room curtains. Impossible tasks for 7-year-olds to accomplish in 5 hours. 20 minutes later, the twins were on the mansion's sidewalk. Barefoot, they shivered as they tried to handle brooms bigger than themselves. The icy wind cut their delicate skin, but they knew that complaining would only make things worse. The previous week, when Chiara mentioned being cold, Helena made her stay on the balcony for an hour to learn what real cold is. It was then that a woman with curly red hair stopped in front of the gate. Rose, the new teacher at the private school where the girls studied, watched the scene in disbelief. She had decided to stop by the student's house before going to school. Something told her she needed to better understand the context of those children who, in recent weeks, had become increasingly withdrawn in the classroom. Olivia? Chiara, are you all right? Rose called, approaching the gate. The girls froze. Helena had forbidden any interaction with strangers without her express permission. It was Olivia who finally spoke without lifting her eyes from the broom. We're fine, teacher, just helping with the homework. Rose noticed the girls' bare feet, the thin dresses completely inappropriate for the weather, and something in her chest tightened. Before she could say anything more, Helena emerged through the front door, her face transformed by a perfectly calculated smile. Professor Rose, what a pleasant surprise. Were you just passing by? Rose realized she needed to be careful. Good morning, Mrs. Alliance. Yes, I was on my way to school and thought I'd say hello to the girls. Helena approached the gate, her impeccably manicured nails tapping lightly on the ornate metal. How kind of you. The girls are learning about responsibility while their father is away. Victor believes, as I do, that discipline is fundamental to character development. Rose noticed how the girls seemed to shrink at the sound of their stepmother's voice, even when she used her sweetest tone. I understand, but the weather is particularly cold today, and they... Oh, they just came out. They were wearing coats, but you know how children are, Helena interrupted, waving dismissively. They'll be back inside soon. Actually, if you'll allow me to be frank, I find your interest lovely, but I prefer visits to be scheduled. We have a fairly structured routine here. Before Rose could answer, Helena called the girls. Olivia, Chiara, come and thank the teacher for her visit. She's leaving now. The twins approached, their eyes fixed on the floor. Thank you for the visit, teacher, they murmured in unison, their voices almost inaudible. See you at school later, girls, Rose said, trying unsuccessfully to catch the eye of one of them. As she walked away, Rose glanced back one last time. Helena had already disappeared inside the house, but the girls were back on their brooms, their small silhouettes appearing even smaller against the imposing facade of the mansion. At school, hours later, Rose couldn't get that image out of her head. She watched the twins all morning, how they sat apart from the other students, how Chiara barely spoke, how Olivia startled when someone raised their voice, how they both ate their snacks with a voracity that suggested more than simple childhood hunger. During the art activity, Rose asked the students to draw their houses and families. That's when she noticed something alarming in Chiara's drawing, 2 small figures holding hands, crying under a dark shadow that loomed over them. In the corner of the paper, written in trembling letters, "We are afraid." "Kiara, darling, can you tell me about your drawing?" Rose asked softly, kneeling beside the girl. Kiara's eyes briefly met the teacher's, and Rose saw something there that made her shudder. An emptiness, a deep fear that no child should ever know. "It's just a drawing." "Teacher?" Olivia interjected quickly, stepping slightly in front of her sister. "Kiara likes horror stories." Rose realized Olivia was protecting her sister. "I understand. It's very beautiful, Kiara. Can I save it for next week's exhibition?" Kiara nodded slightly, while Olivia seemed to be calculating something in her expression. At the end of the day, when the children had left, Rose stayed behind, watching through the living room window as the twins got into a luxury car. In the front seat was Helena, who didn't look back as the girls quietly settled into the back seat. Rose took Kiara's drawing and put it in her folder. Something was deeply wrong in that house, and she needed to find out what it was, even if it meant confronting one of the most powerful and influential families in the city. What Rose didn't know was that the drawing in her folder would only be the beginning of a battle that would test not only her courage, but also her own professional and personal survival. The following days brought a subtle but noticeable change in the twins' behavior. Rose noticed that Olivia, always the more communicative of the two, now only responded when directly questioned. Kiara, in turn, seemed to have withdrawn even further into her silence, as if building an invisible cocoon around herself. The girls' grades, once exemplary, began to fall. During recess, they remained together in a corner of the playground, watching the other children play, like spectators of a life that did not belong to them. It was during a teachers' meeting that Rose decided to share her concerns. "I'm noticing alarming signs in the Allianz twins," she explained, while her colleagues looked at her with expressions ranging from concern to skepticism. "They're isolating themselves, their grades are dropping, and there are indications of, neglect." Agnes, the school principal, a middle-aged woman with nearly 30 years of experience in the education system, adjusted her glasses on her thin nose. "Rose, we need to be careful with accusations of this nature. The Allianz family is extremely respected. Victor Allianz is one of the biggest donors to our institution." "I'm not making frivolous accusations," Rose insisted. "I saw the girls sweeping the sidewalk barefoot on a freezing morning, wearing inappropriate clothing. They are visibly losing weight. And there's the drawing." She showed Kiara's drawing to the group. There was an awkward silence. "Children draw strange things all the time," commented Felipe, the physical education teacher. "My nephew once drew our family being attacked by dinosaurs. It doesn't mean he actually believed it." "This is different," Rose argued, feeling her frustration growing. "Don't you see the pattern? The isolation, the change in behavior, the physical signs." Agnes sighed. "Rose, I understand your concern. As educators, we have a duty to be vigilant, but we also have a duty not to rush to judgment. Why don't we schedule a formal meeting with Mrs. Allianz to discuss the girls' academic performance? This would give us the opportunity to observe the family dynamics more closely." Rose agreed, although she felt they were wasting precious time. The meeting was scheduled for the following week, but Helena cancelled twice, citing unavoidable commitments related to charity events she was organizing. When she finally attended, she was accompanied by an assistant who took notes on every word spoken during the meeting. "I appreciate the school's concern," Helena said, her smile not reaching her cold eyes. "The girls are going through an adjustment period. As you know, their mother left us 2 years ago. And with Victor's constant travels, I've been the only parental figure present." Rose observed how Helena spoke about the twins as if they were projects, not children. She described the routine at home with carefully chosen words: structure, discipline, responsibility. But Rose perceived the subtext: control, isolation, fear. "I've noticed they seem tired at school," Rose commented, "like they haven't been getting enough sleep." Helena's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Olivia has been having nightmares. I believe they are remnants of the trauma of losing her mother. As for Kiara, she has always been more introverted. And what about food? They often seem ravenous during snack time." "Ah, that's interesting," Helena laughed softly. "We recently consulted a nutritionist. He recommended a lighter diet in the mornings. Perhaps we're in the adaptation period." Each question was answered with a perfectly plausible explanation. To any outside observer, Helena seemed like a devoted stepmother, concerned about the well-being of her stepdaughters, doing her best under difficult circumstances. But Rose saw beyond the facade. She saw the little tics, the micro-expressions, the way Helena spoke about the girls, not to them or for them. At the end of the meeting, as Helena stood up to leave, Rose noticed something that alarmed her even more. The twins were waiting in the hallway, sitting perfectly upright in uncomfortable chairs, hands on their knees, eyes fixed on the wall ahead. They didn't move, they didn't talk, they didn't show any of the natural behavior of 7-year-old children forced to wait for adults. Olivia. "Kiara," Helena called, her tone suddenly higher-pitched, more motherly. "Come and greet Teacher Rose and Principal Agnes." The girls stood up in unison and approached each other with measured steps. "Good afternoon, Professor Rose." "Good afternoon, Principal Agnes," they said. Their voices so similar it was difficult to distinguish who was speaking. "How are you girls?" Rose asked, crouching down to be at their level. "We're fine." "Thank you," Olivia replied, while Kiara simply nodded. "Kiara isn't feeling very talkative today," Helena explained, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. Rose noticed how Kiara's body stiffened at the touch. "But it's all right, isn't it, darling?" Kiara nodded again, her face a studied mask of calm that no 7-year-old should be able to maintain. As she watched them leave, Rose felt a knot in her stomach. The meeting hadn't revealed anything concrete she could use to help the twins, but it had strengthened her conviction that something deeply disturbing was happening in that house. The next day, during art class, Rose proposed a different activity. "Today we're going to draw our feelings," she explained. "They don't have to be drawings of real things. They can be colors, shapes, whatever comes to mind when you think about how you feel." The class was excited about the open-ended approach. The children spread out around the room, some laughing as they discussed which colors they would use. The twins, as always, worked in silence, each in their own corner. Rose circulated around the room, stopping briefly to comment on the work, until she reached Kiara's desk. The girl's drawing made her stop. A black box, small hands pushing from inside, as if trying to get out. At the top of the page, in small trembling letters, "Help." "Kiara, can you tell me about your drawing?" Rose asked softly. The girl looked around, making sure no one was listening. Then, in an almost inaudible voice, she whispered, "It's the closet. When we make a mistake." Before Rose could ask more, Olivia stepped forward, placing herself between her sister and the teacher. "She's talking about the game we invented, teacher," she explained quickly. "Hide and seek in the closet." Rose noticed the protective lie, the way Olivia assumed the role of guardian. "I understand. It's a very expressive drawing, Kiara." At the end of class, Rose discreetly collected the drawing, adding it to the growing folder of evidence she was compiling. She didn't know exactly what she would do with it yet, but she knew she needed to document everything. The following morning, upon arriving at school, she found a notice. The Allianz twins would no longer be attending classes. Helena had decided to homeschool them. The official justification, communicated in a formal letter addressed to the school administration, cited concerns that the school environment did not meet the specific emotional needs of the girls. Agnes called Rose into her office. "I'm sorry, Rose. I know you genuinely care about the girls, but there's nothing we can do. The decision to homeschool children is a parental right." "This is no coincidence," Rose protested. "Helena is isolating the girls because she realized we're watching. This is a classic abuser tactic." Agnes's expression hardened. "Rose, I understand your concern, but I need to remind you to be cautious about accusations without concrete evidence. The Allianz family has the resources to turn this into a legal nightmare for the school." Rose left the room feeling the weight of helplessness. But instead of giving up, she felt her determination grow. If the school system couldn't or wouldn't help, she would find another way. The twins needed someone to fight for them, and Rose decided at that moment that she would be that person. Autumn was advancing in the capital, and with it, a chill that seemed to reflect Rose's state of mind. 2 weeks had passed since the twins left school, and each day increased her anxiety. In the teacher's lounge, occasional comments about the girls were gradually replaced by conversations about other matters, as if Olivia and Kiara were just a temporary problem that now belonged to the past. But for Rose, the twins' absence from school was like a silent scream that only she could hear. After days of reflection and research, she decided she needed to act, even without institutional support. Her first attempt was a visit to the Allianz mansion, only to discover that the gate was now guarded by a security guard who politely but firmly informed her that Mrs. Helena was not receiving unscheduled visitors. "When can I schedule a visit, then?" Rose asked, trying to maintain her composure. "The family is in a period of privacy, ma'am," the security guard replied, clearly reciting instructions he had received. Due to Mr. Allianz's international commitments, Rose observed the mansion's windows, all with curtains drawn, as if blindfolded. Somewhere inside, two girls were trapped in a routine that no one else could see or question. It was that same afternoon, sitting in a cafe near the school, that Rose overheard a conversation at the next table. "I worked in that house for almost a year, so I've never seen anything like it," said a middle-aged woman, visibly disturbed. "That woman is a monster disguised as a socialite." Rose couldn't help but turn around. "Excuse me for interrupting, but are you talking about the Allianz family?" The woman stared at her in surprise, then with suspicion. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Rose. I was the twins' teacher." "Olivia and Chiara." The woman's expression softened immediately. "Anna," she introduced herself. "I was a housekeeper at the Allianz household until 3 weeks ago, when I was dismissed for incompatibility with the family's values." Rose felt her heart race. "May I join you?" "I believe we have much to discuss." Over the next 2 hours, Rose heard accounts that confirmed her worst fears. Anna described in detail Helena's disciplinary methods when Victor was traveling, which was almost always. The girls were forced to perform tasks impossible for their age, often without adequate food until they completed them. Mistakes were punished with what Helena called reflection time, hours locked in the master bedroom closet, sometimes wrapped only in damp towels, in the dark. She made them stay in absolute silence. Once little Chiara started crying after 3 hours in there. "Helena increased the punishment to the whole night," Anna recounted, her voice choked with emotion. "The next morning, when I opened the closet to let them out, the girl was in a state of shock. She didn't speak for 2 days. Rose felt nauseous. And her father? Does Victor know about this?" Anna shook her head. "Helena is meticulous. When he's home, everything is perfect. The girls are presented as models of good behavior. And if they make a mistake, she just looks at them in a certain way. They know what will come next when he's gone." "Why didn't you report this sooner?" Anna lowered her eyes. "I tried once. I called Child Protective Services. They scheduled a visit, which gave Helena time to prepare everything. The girls were instructed on what to say. The house was spotless. And then, well, Helena found out. I don't know how, but she found out." She paused, swallowing hard. "I was threatened. Not just with a defamation lawsuit, but physically. And I have 2 children to raise alone." Rose understood the woman's moral dilemma. "Do you have any proof? Anything we can use to help them now?" Anna hesitated, then opened her bag. "I took this out on my last day before being escorted out. I knew I needed some evidence in case something worse happened." She handed Rose an envelope. Inside was a photograph, the twins sleeping on the bedroom floor, wrapped in a single thin blanket, while beside them were neatly arranged piles of clothes that had apparently been forced to fold. The clock on the wall read 2:37 a.m. "My God," Rose murmured. "There's more," Anna said, leaning forward. "Helena keeps a diary. She writes everything down. Every infraction the girls commit, every punishment. It's as if she needs to document her own control. She keeps the diary locked in her office drawer." "This could be crucial," Rose said, her mind racing. "I also know that she calls them number 1 and number 2. She even stole their names," Anna continued. "And there's something even more sinister going on. In the last few weeks before my dismissal, I noticed that Chiara was completely mute. Not just quiet, mute. She didn't even speak to her sister." Rose nodded gravely. "Selective mutism. It's a traumatic response." Anna took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "I'm willing to testify if necessary. I took too long to make this decision, and I blame myself for it every day. But those girls, no one deserves to live like this." With Anna's information and the evidence she had already collected, Rose sought out a social worker. Viola was known for her dedication to difficult cases and for not being intimidated by influential families. After examining the drawings, the photo, and listening to the detailed accounts, she agreed that there were sufficient grounds to initiate a formal investigation. It won't be easy, Viola warned. Families like the Alliance have the resources to manipulate the system, but we will follow all protocols. If there is abuse, we will document it and take action. The first visit from the Guardianship Council to the Alliance mansion took place 3 days later. Rose anxiously awaited news, which arrived via a call from Viola late in the afternoon. It was just as Anna predicted, Viola said, her voice tense. Helena was prepared. The house looked like it came straight out of a decorating magazine. The girls were well-dressed, articulate, or rather Olivia was. Chiara didn't speak, but Helena explained that she's in therapy for social anxiety. And you believe that? Rose asked, incredulous. Of course not. But we need more than suspicions, Rose. The girls were interviewed separately. Olivia denied any wrongdoing. When questioned about the drawing, she said it was just part of a story she was creating. She's protecting her sister, and probably herself as well. Yes, I noticed that. As for Chiara, she really doesn't speak. We've tried in various ways, but she just looks at her hands. We asked her to write, and she only wrote, "Everything is fine, we like staying at home." Rose felt a lump in her throat. They're scared. Helena must have made it clear what would happen if they told the truth. We will continue the process, Viola assured. I requested an independent psychological evaluation, and we are checking Helena's professional history, her finances, anything that can give us more context. The following morning, Rose received an unexpected call. It was Agnes, the school principal, her voice tense and formal. Rose, I need you to come to my office immediately. When she arrived, Rose found not only Agnes, but also the school lawyer and Helena Alliance, seated like a queen on her throne, her cold eyes fixed on her. Miss Rose, Helena began, her tone falsely sweet. I understand that you have been spreading serious accusations about my family. Agnes intervened, visibly uncomfortable. Helena has filed a formal complaint against you, Rose. She alleges harassment, defamation, and inappropriate obsession with her daughters. Stepdaughters, Rose corrected automatically. And there's nothing inappropriate about my concern for the well-being of 2 children who show all the signs of emotional abuse. The school's lawyer cleared his throat. Miss Rose, Miss Alliance brought to our attention that you visited her residence uninvited, contacted former employees seeking negative information, and initiated a social services investigation based on children's drawings. I am fulfilling my legal duty as an educator, Rose argued, maintaining her composure. We are legally obligated to report suspected abuse. Unfounded suspicions, Helena interrupted, her voice now icy. Based on the fanciful interpretations of a professor, with no qualifications in child psychology. You are disrupting the emotional recovery of my girls, who are still dealing with the trauma of losing their mother. Agnes seemed conflicted. Rose, you know I support protecting our children, but Helena has presented troubling evidence. What evidence? Helena opened a folder. Emails you sent to various agencies talking about me and my daughters. Records of repeated calls to my residence. And this? She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a manipulated photo of Rose observing the Alliance mansion from afar, clearly altered to appear as a form of obsessive surveillance. This is fabricated, Rose protested. The school cannot get involved in this conflict, Agnes finally declared. Rose, we are placing you on administrative leave until this matter is resolved. Rose felt her blood run cold. This was exactly what Helena wanted, to remove anyone who could help the twins. You're making a terrible mistake, she said, standing up. Those girls need help. My daughters have all the support they need, Helena replied, a cold smile on her lips. From qualified professionals, not from frustrated teachers with fantasies of heroism. Upon leaving the school, Rose realized that Helena was employing the same strategy she had used with Anna, isolation and discrediting. But unlike the former governess, Rose had no children to protect, nothing to lose. And above all, she had the truth on her side. What she didn't know was that the battle was only beginning, and that Helena Alliance was prepared for much more than administrative threats. The days turned into weeks. And autumn gave way to the first winds of winter. Rose, away from school, felt increasingly isolated. Calls to classmates went unanswered. Invitations to social events ceased abruptly. The silence around her grew like an invisible fortress, meticulously built by Helena. On a particularly cold morning, Rose received a letter from the school administration. Her temporary leave had been extended indefinitely, pending psychological evaluation, a recommendation made by the school board after new evidence of obsessive behavior. Sitting in her small apartment, staring at the formal letter bearing the logo of the school, where she had dedicated 5 years of her life, Rose finally understood the extent of Helena Allianz's power. It wasn't just about money or social influence. It was about systematic manipulation, about rewriting reality so that the victim appeared guilty and the perpetrator. The victim, the same thing she does with the twins, Rose murmured to herself, distorts everything until they doubt their own sense of reality. Determined not to let isolation get the better of her, Rose arranged a meeting with Viola, the social worker. They chose a cafe downtown, far from the upscale area where the Allianz family hung out. "The case is getting complicated," Viola admitted, after checking that no one was close enough to hear. "Helena hired one of the most expensive law firms in the capital. They are questioning every step of our procedure, alleging institutional persecution and emotional harm to the children." "And what about the psychological evaluations?" Rose asked anxiously. Helena cancelled 3 times, always with impeccable excuses. When it finally happened, she brought in a child trauma specialist she herself selected to oversee the sessions. Viola paused, frustrated. The independent psychologist barely managed to connect with the girls. Olivia seemed to be reciting rehearsed responses, and Chiara didn't say a single word. "The mutism is getting worse," Rose concluded, feeling a tightness in her chest. "Yes, Helena claims it's a result of the institutional harassment the family is facing, not the alleged abuses we were never able to prove." Viola sipped her coffee, clearly disturbed. "There's more. We learned that Victor Allianz extended his business trip. He's been away for almost 3 months. Helena has total control over the girls." Rose looked out the cafe window, watching the bustling city, people rushing to and fro, all absorbed in their own lives. Somewhere in that same city, 2 children were trapped in a silent nightmare that no one could or wanted to see. "We can't give up," Rose said finally. "If we stop now, Helena wins." "And the girl—" "I'm not giving up," Viola assured. "But we need to be strategic. Helena has built a powerful narrative. The devoted stepmother caring for children traumatized by the loss of their mother, confronting an obsessive teacher and an insensitive bureaucratic system. It's a compelling story, especially with its resources. So we created a better narrative," Rose said, an idea beginning to take shape. One based on the truth. In the following days, Rose began methodically compiling everything she knew about Helena Allianz. She investigated her history before her marriage to Victor, her social circles, the charity events she organized, the foundations she chaired. Each fragment of information was a piece of the puzzle she needed to assemble. It was during this investigation that she discovered something intriguing. Before becoming Helena Allianz, she was simply Helena Lehman, a woman of modest origins who had risen rapidly through social circles after a brief marriage to an elderly businessman who died under unclear circumstances. There was no record of a career of her own, only a series of strategic relationships that gradually elevated her to high society. Rose also found accounts from former employees of other residences where Helena had lived, all describing a meticulously controlling person who oscillated between captivating charm in public and calculating coldness in private. Armed with this information, Rose sought someone who could help her build a stronger narrative. That's when she met Marco, an investigative journalist who had published a series of reports on abuse in elite families. "What you have is circumstantial," Marco explained after hearing Rose's entire account. "Convincing to me, but insufficient for a story that could confront her lawyers. So what do we need? Direct evidence. Something she can't deny or explain. Her testimony, a recording, documents—" "The diary," Rose reminded them. "Anna mentioned a diary where Helena records everything." Marco nodded slowly. "That would be perfect. But how do I get access to him?" That same night, Rose received an unexpected call. It was Anna, the former housekeeper, her voice trembling. "Rose, something's going on. I went by the mansion today. I needed to see for myself." The curtains in the girls' room were open. I saw Olivia leaning against the window, looking out. She seemed different, thinner, her hair cut short. And then Helena appeared and abruptly closed the curtain. "Haircut?" Rose asked, alarmed. The twins always had long hair. It was a specific request from their biological mother before she passed away, that the girls' hair never be cut. Exactly. Helena is erasing any connection they have with their mother, Anna concluded. And there's more. I managed to talk to Fiona, the new governess. She doesn't know everything yet, of course, but she told me that Helena is upset because Victor is finally coming back next week. Apparently he's questioning the girl's absence from school. The news of Victor's return was the first real hope in weeks. If he wasn't already completely under Helena's control, he could be a crucial ally. The following day, Rose met with Marco again, sharing the new information. The father's return is an opportunity, Marco reflected, but Helena is certainly already preparing the ground, constructing her version of the facts. "We need to get to him first," Rose insisted. Marco hesitated. "I have a contact at his company. I can try to find out exactly when he's returning and where he'll be in the first few days." "But Rose," he looked at her seriously, "you understand the risks, right? Helena won't simply accept being exposed. She'll fight back even harder. I've already lost my job. My reputation is in tatters. I'm seen as an obsessive and unbalanced woman," Rose replied with surprising calm. "What more can she take from me?" "Her freedom. Her physical safety. Don't underestimate people like Helena when they feel cornered." Rose nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. But the twins' faces, especially Kiara's, immersed in her traumatic silence, wouldn't let her give up. Meanwhile, at the Alliance mansion, the routine of control and fear continued. Without school as a refuge, the twins were completely at Helena's mercy. Household chores had been intensified, and periods of reflection in the closet had become more frequent. On a particularly tense afternoon, Helena discovered that the girls had kept hidden notebooks where they drew and wrote messages to each other, their secret form of communication, since Kiara no longer spoke. "What is this?" Helena asked, her voice dangerously calm as she found the notebooks under Olivia's mattress. "Secrets, lies about me," Olivia, visibly trembling, tried to explain. "They're just drawings, Mom, to make Kiara feel better." "I am not your mother," Helena corrected coldly. "And this." She flipped through the pages filled with drawings of sunny landscapes, figures holding hands under blue skies, a long-haired woman who clearly represented the girl's deceased mother. "This is unacceptable." She dragged the twins to the back garden, where the barbecue grill was set up. "Light it," he ordered Olivia, handing her matches. "Please," Olivia pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "They're just drawings." "Turn it on," Helena repeated, "or you two will spend the night on the balcony. A storm is forecast." With trembling hands, Olivia obeyed. When the fire began to burn, Helena threw the notebooks into the flames. "Whining on paper won't bring your mother back," she said, watching the pages twist and turn black. "The only reality that matters is the one I create for you. Do you understand?" Kiara, who hadn't spoken in weeks, suddenly let out a small sound, something between a moan and a sigh, as she watched her creations turn to ashes. Helena turned to her, surprised. "Oh, you found your voice!" "How convenient." She approached the girl, bending down to look her in the eyes. "Keep it. You'll need it when your father gets here. He'll want to hear how happy we all are here, won't he?" That night, locked in their room after yet another meal denied due to inappropriate behavior, the twins hugged each other on one of the beds. Olivia tried to comfort her sister, who had returned to her absolute silence. "Dad's coming back next week," Olivia whispered. "Let's hold out until then, okay? Remember Professor Rose? She was trying to help us. Maybe we can tell Dad." On the other side of the door, Helena listened to everything. A cold smile formed on her lips. Victor would be in her hands within hours of her return, just as he always had been. And as for the meddling teacher, well, Helena had special plans for her. What Helena didn't know was that her plans were about to encounter an unexpected obstacle, because while she was listening to the twins, Anna, the former housekeeper, was revealing to Marco audio recordings secretly made during her last days at the mansion, recordings that captured Helena Allianz's true face. The recording was disturbing in its calculated coldness. Helena's voice, captured during one of the disciplinary sessions with the twins, reverberated through Marco's office while Rose, Anna, and Viola listened in stunned silence. "These girls are not mine. They are an expensive burden that I need to manage to maintain my lifestyle." Marco paused the audio. "When exactly was this recorded?" "About a month ago," Anna replied. "It was my last day at the mansion. Helena didn't know I was in the hallway. She was talking to someone on the phone in the office with the door ajar." "The quality isn't ideal," Marco admitted, "but the content is unequivocal. She explicitly refers to the girls as a burden." "There's more," Anna added, handing Marco a small memory device. "I recorded several conversations. Helena talking to the girls, threatening them, manipulating them. And this too." She pointed to a specific audio file. Marco played it. "If you keep crying, you lose the right to speak to your father. Do you understand, Chiara? One single sound and you'll never see Victor again. I have enough power to send you to a boarding school abroad, where you'll spend the rest of your childhood. Is that what you want?" Rose closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of horror and validation. Finally, there was concrete proof of the psychological abuse. "Why didn't you deliver this sooner?" Viola asked, her expression torn between gratitude and frustration. Anna lowered her gaze. "Fear, Helena has contacts everywhere. I didn't know who to trust, and there were the threats. Not just against me, but against my children." She took a deep breath. "But I can't live with myself anymore, knowing what's happening in that house. Especially now that Chiara has stopped talking." Marco's expression changed drastically. "This changes everything. Now we have direct evidence, not just allegations or interpretations. I can start preparing a report based on this." "We don't just need to expose Helena in the media," Viola interjected. "We need to ensure the girls' safety. With these recordings, I can request an emergency protection order." "And what about the father?" Rose asked. "Anna mentioned he would be coming back. If he really doesn't know the extent of the abuse, we need to reach him before Helena ensnares him in her web of lies," Marco concluded. "My contact confirmed. Victor Allianz returns tomorrow. He has a meeting at the company's headquarters at 2 p.m. A plan began to take shape. Viola would use the recordings to request a restraining order, while Marco would prepare a detailed investigative report, but keep it on hold, a form of insurance in case the legal system failed. Rose and Anna would try to contact Victor directly, presenting the evidence before he arrived home. What none of them expected was what happened the following morning. Rose was getting ready for her date with Victor when her phone rang. It was Marco, his voice urgent and excited. "Turn on the television now. Channel 12. Rose obeyed, only to see Helena Allianz's face fill the screen. She was giving a live interview to a popular morning show. Beside her, a journalist smiled sympathetically as Helena, with tears in her eyes, spoke about the challenges of raising two girls traumatized by the loss of their mother. And then we discovered that one of the teachers had developed a disturbing fixation on the girls," Helena said, her voice trembling with perfectly calibrated emotion. "She started showing up at our house following us, even contacting former employees to spread lies about our family." "How awful," the presenter commented, her indignation clearly directed at Rose, not Helena. "How are the girls coping with this?" "Chiara developed selective mutism," Helena revealed, a solitary and studied tear running down her perfectly made-up face. "The doctors say it's a direct result of this harassment. That's why I had to take them out of school. To protect them." Rose watched in horror as Helena effectively rewrote reality on national television, transforming herself into a victim and turning Rose into an obsessive stalker. "That's brilliant in a wicked way," Marco commented on the phone. "She's controlling the narrative before we can even present our evidence. We need to act now," Rose decided. "Today." Meanwhile, at the Allianz mansion, the twins watched their stepmother's interview on the living room television, forced by Helena to witness her performance. Olivia watched with critical eyes, already capable, even at 7 years old, of recognizing elaborate lies. Chiara, on the other hand, kept her gaze fixed on her own hands, refusing to look at the screen. "See how it works," Helena said when she returned and turned off the television. "Notice the power of controlled narrative. Now, even if that meddling teacher tries something, No one will believe her. The following hours were a race against time. Rose and Anna drove to the office building where Victor was to have his meeting. Viola filed an urgent restraining order, attaching the recordings as evidence. Marco worked feverishly on his report, now with a renewed sense of urgency. In the elegant lobby of the office building, Rose and Anna waited nervously. They had sent a message to Victor's secretary, indicating that they had urgent information about their daughters. Now they could only hope that he would agree to see them. After almost 2 hours of waiting, the secretary approached. "Mr. Alliance will be able to meet with you for exactly 10 minutes before your next meeting." In his spacious top-floor office, Victor Alliance was the picture of a successful businessman. Tall, elegantly dressed, with graying hair at the temples that lent him an air of authority. His face, however, showed signs of weariness and worry that his impeccable suit could not disguise. "Miss Rose, isn't it?" he said, indicating the chairs in front of his desk. Helena mentioned that the school had dismissed an obsessive teacher. "I imagine that's you." Rose maintained her composure. "Mr. Alliance, I came because I am deeply concerned about your daughters. And no, I'm not obsessive. I'm just someone who saw alarming signs and can't stay silent." Victor studied Rose for a few seconds, then looked at Anna. "And you are?" "Anna, sir. I was a housekeeper in your home for almost a year. I was fired a few weeks ago." Victor frowned. "Helena said you resigned suddenly." "No, sir. I was fired after questioning the disciplinary methods your wife uses with the girls when you are traveling." A tense silence settled in the office. Victor looked from one to the other, his expression unreadable. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Rose was direct, that your daughters are suffering systematic psychological abuse. That Helena treats them cruelly when you are not present. That Chiara developed selective mutism, not because of alleged persecution by me, but as a result of the trauma she experiences daily. Victor stood up, visibly disturbed. "These are very serious accusations." "And we have evidence," Rose replied, gesturing to Anna, who placed the memory device on the table. For 20 minutes, well beyond the 10 initially granted, Victor listened to the recordings, his face transforming from skepticism to shock and finally to something close to horror. When the last recording ended, he was pale. "When were they made?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "In the last few weeks before my resignation," Anna replied. "Always when you were traveling." Victor pressed a button on his phone. "Cancel my upcoming meetings." "All of them." He turned to Rose and Anna. "There's more, isn't there?" "I want to know everything." "Absolutely everything." During the following hour, Rose and Anna detailed their observations. The exhausting tasks imposed on the girls, the food deprivation as punishment, the nights in the closet, the increasing social isolation, the girls' withdrawal from school, the smear campaign against Rose, and most disturbingly, Chiara's psychological deterioration, who had completely stopped speaking. Victor listened, occasionally asking questions, his expression alternating between anger and deep guilt. "How could I not have noticed?" he finally murmured, more to himself than to them. "How could I have been so blind?" "Helena is extremely skilled at manipulation," Rose explained gently. "She presents a perfect version of reality when you're around. And I've been absent too long," Victor concluded, the guilt evident in his voice. "Since Fiona, my first wife," he quickly corrected himself. "Since she left us, I've thrown myself into work. I thought Helena would be a blessing, someone who would take care of the girls while I couldn't face the pain. It's not too late to protect them," Rose assured. "But we need to act quickly, especially because Helena gave an interview today portraying herself as a victim," Victor finished. "I saw it on my phone on the way to the airport." He looked at Rose. "She painted you as some kind of obsessive stalker. Part of her strategy, to discredit anyone who poses a threat." Victor took a deep breath and made a decision. "I'm going home now. I'm going to confront her with these recordings." "This could put the girls at risk," Anna warned. "Helena might react unpredictably if she feels cornered." "I agree," Rose added. "Social worker Viola is requesting a protective order based on this evidence. If we can wait," Victor shook his head. "I can't wait knowing my daughters are suffering right now. But I understand your concern." He thought for a few moments. "I'll do this. I'll go home, but I won't confront Helena immediately. I'll observe, try to see for myself. And I'll call you as soon as I'm sure the girls are safe." Meanwhile, at the courthouse, Viola was facing a bureaucratic battle. The judge assigned to the case remained skeptical, even after listening to the recordings. "Were these recordings obtained legally?" he questioned. "Were they made with the knowledge and consent of Ms. Allianz?" "Your Honor, in cases of suspected child abuse, the protection of children must prevail over technicalities," Viola argued. "The law is clear. Ms. Viola, illegally obtained evidence cannot be considered. Furthermore, what I heard were harsh words, perhaps even inappropriate, but not necessarily constituted abuse." Viola felt the despair growing. "Sir, we have a 7-year-old child who has developed selective mutism. We have reports of food deprivation, of confinement." "Reports are not proof," the judge interrupted. "And I must remind you that Ms. Allianz voluntarily attended previous assessments, where nothing conclusive was found." The legal battle promised to be long and uncertain. Meanwhile, Marco was finalizing his report, verifying every detail, every allegation, aware that he would face not only Helena, but the entire legal apparatus that money could buy. And at the Allianz mansion, Helena carefully prepared the scene for Victor's return. The girls in elegant clothes, the house spotless, a special dinner being prepared. She gave the twins clear instructions. "Your father will arrive in a few hours. We'll all be happy and loving, right? Remember what will happen if you disappoint me." What Helena didn't know was that, for the first time since taking control of that house, she would face people who knew her true nature, and were determined to expose it, no matter the cost. Victor Allianz felt a knot in his stomach as he crossed the gates of the mansion. What had once been a symbol of achievement and status now seemed like an elegant prison, where his daughters suffered while he traveled the world, immersed in business. The imposing neoclassical facade, with its gleaming white columns and tall windows, had never seemed so cold and menacing. Upon entering, he was greeted by the aroma of an elaborate dinner and the soft sound of classical music, exactly as Helena always prepared for his return. The studied perfection of the scene made him observe everything with new eyes, questioning how much of it was authentic and how much was a carefully constructed facade. "Victor! Darling!" Helena appeared in the hall, dazzling in a navy blue dress, her smile deliberately warm. "I missed you so much." She reached out to hug him, but something in Victor's expression made her hesitate. "The girls?" he asked, his voice deliberately neutral. "In the bedroom getting ready for dinner. They're so eager to see him," Helena replied, studying her husband's face. "Is something wrong?" "You seem tense." Victor forced a smile. "Just tiredness from the trip. I'll see the girls before dinner." Helena made to follow him, but he raised a hand. "I'd like a moment alone with them, if you don't mind." A faint shadow crossed Helena's face. "Of course, darling. I'll be in the living room overseeing the final details of dinner." Victor climbed the stairs, feeling the weight of his own negligence. How many times had he accepted the perfect and convenient version of reality that Helena offered him? How many times had he ignored small signs because it was easier to believe that everything was all right? In the second-floor hallway, she stopped in front of the twins' bedroom door. She took a deep breath and knocked gently. "Olivia? Chiara? It's me, Dad. Can I come in?" He heard hurried footsteps and the door opened. Olivia was there, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. Victor felt his heart clench. She looked thinner, her hair, which had always been long like her mother's, was now short, almost to her chin. "Dad!" she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. Victor wrapped her in his arms, noticing how fragile she looked. Over his daughter's shoulder, he saw Chiara sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at him without moving. Her hair was also short, and there was something in her eyes, an emptiness, an absence, and that deeply alarmed him. He knelt before Olivia, holding her small hands. "I missed you both so much." "We too, Dad," Olivia replied, her voice more restrained than he remembered. Victor approached Chiara, who remained motionless. "Hello, Princess. Aren't you going to give Daddy a hug?" Chiara stood up slowly and hugged him, but said nothing. Her eyes, once so expressive, now seemed like closed windows. "Chiara isn't talking, Dad," Olivia explained, with a caution no 7-year-old should show. "Helena says she's... what's the word again?" "Trauma." Victor felt a chill. The word in his daughter's mouth sounded wrong, rehearsed, as if she were repeating something she had heard many times. "Since when has she stopped talking?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Olivia shrugged, but her eyes betrayed a careful calculation of what to say. I don't really know. It's been a while. Victor noticed other disturbing details. The almost military-like organization of the room, the absence of the toys and drawings that used to be scattered around, the way they both seemed constantly alert, as if expecting some danger. Are you enjoying studying at home? He asked casually, carefully observing their reactions. Olivia glanced quickly at the door as if checking to see if they were truly alone. It's different. Do they miss school? Their friends? Teacher Rose? When Rose's name was mentioned, Victor saw something change in Olivia's face, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even hope. But it was quickly replaced by a neutral, controlled expression. Helena says that Professor Rose is a bad person, she said carefully. That she wanted to hurt us. And you believe that? Olivia lowered her eyes. I don't know. She seemed nice. At that moment, Helena appeared in the doorway. Dinner is ready, dears. Olivia, Chiara, wash your hands, okay? Victor observed how the girls immediately stirred at the sound of Helena's voice, not with the natural excitement of children eager for dinner, but with the programmed efficiency of those who fear the consequences of any delay. During dinner, Victor observed the dynamics with heightened attention. Helena dominated the conversation, recounting the girls' activities with studied enthusiasm, as if reading from a rehearsed script. Olivia occasionally confirmed with nods or monosyllabic answers. Chiara simply ate in silence, her eyes rarely leaving her plate. Don't they look amazing with their new haircuts? Helena commented at one point. I thought it was time for a change, something more practical and modern. Victor remembered his late wife's specific request, that the girls keep their hair long until they decided to cut it themselves. It was a sentimental wish, a family tradition that Fiona cherished. It was quite a dramatic decision, he observed. Did the girls ask for it? Helena chuckled softly. You know how children change their minds. One day Chiara mentioned that she thought short hair was pretty, and Olivia, of course, wanted to imitate her sister. Victor noticed the tension on Olivia's face, the obvious lie she was being forced to maintain. He felt a growing anger, but knew he needed to stay calm, to stick to the plan. After dinner, when the girls were sent to their room to give the adults privacy, Helena served wine in the office. You've been acting strangely since you arrived. Victor, she remarked, handing him a glass. Did something go wrong with your trip? Victor took a small sip, watching Helena over the rim of his glass. I had a visitor today. Rose, the girls' former teacher, and Anna, our former governess. Helena's face betrayed no emotion except for a slight narrowing of her eyes. I understand. I'm sorry you were exposed to that kind of harassment. I should have mentioned it sooner. Those women developed a disturbing fixation on the girls. Rose was expelled from school for obsessive behavior, and Anna, well, she was stealing. Stealing, Victor repeated as if considering the information. Interesting. No formal charges have been filed. I preferred not to involve the police for discretion's sake, but I fired her immediately, of course. Victor placed the glass on the table and took the small memory device from his pocket. They brought me something I think you should hear. Helena looked at the device with studied calmness. What could this be? Recordings. From you, Helena. Talking about the girls. Talking to the girls. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with tension. Helena kept her gaze fixed on Victor, her expression unreadable. So you chose to believe strangers instead of your wife, she said finally, her tone shifting to something colder, more calculated. Interesting. I'm not choosing to believe anyone yet, Victor replied calmly. I'm just searching for the truth. That's why I came back early without warning. To see for myself. And what did you see, Victor? A well-kept house? Children fed and clothed? A devoted wife awaiting your return with a special dinner? I saw my daughters transformed into shadows of themselves. I saw Chiara completely mute, traumatized. I saw Olivia trying to protect her sister, carrying a weight that no child should have to bear. Helena stood up, walking slowly across the room. The girls are going through a difficult time, it's true. The grief over their mother, the adjustment to our new family. And now this obsessive pursuit by an unbalanced teacher. It's natural that they're affected. And the hair? Victor asked. You knew how much it meant to Fiona that they kept their hair long. Helena shrugged. Fiona is dead, Victor. And with all due respect, sentimental traditions aren't practical for the day-to-day lives of active children. The coldness with which she spoke of Victor's deceased wife confirmed something he had long suspected but never wanted to admit. Helena didn't care about the girl's past, their memories, their identity. She wanted to erase all of that, to reshape the twins in her own image. I'll be direct, Helena. I believe you are psychologically abusing my daughters. I have evidence of this, and I will take steps to protect them. Helena's face hardened, her mask of civility finally slipping. You have nothing, Victor. Illegally obtained recordings? Accounts from women with obvious mental disorders? Against my impeccable reputation, my history of charitable work, my public role as a devoted stepmother. She approached, her voice lowering to a menacing whisper. Think carefully about what you're doing. If you decide to confront me, it won't be a clean fight. I have connections you can't even imagine, information about your business that could destroy everything you've built. Are you threatening me? I'm just reminding you of the practical realities of our situation. Helena smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. After all, who do you think a judge will believe? Me, the devoted wife who appeared on national television today defending our family, or you, the absent father who barely knows the routine of your own daughters? Victor felt the weight of truth in those words. Helena had carefully constructed her public image while he was away for months at a time. The girls will speak, he argued. Helena laughed, a cold, calculated sound. Olivia will say exactly what I instruct, as she always has. And Kiara? Well, she doesn't speak, remember? The conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. Helena frowned, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Who could it be at this hour? The housekeeper appeared at the office door. Madam, it's the police. I'm with the social worker. Helena paled slightly but regained her composure in seconds. Have them come in, Fiona, and please make sure the girls stay in their room. Victor felt a wave of relief. Viola had obtained the emergency protection order, or perhaps Marco had published his story, forcing the authorities to act. Either way, the net was closing in on Helena. In the entrance hall, 2 police officers waited with Viola, whose face showed professional determination. Ms. Allianz, one of the officers began, we have a court order to conduct a welfare assessment of the minors Olivia and Kiara Allianz, following allegations of possible psychological abuse. Helena maintained her polite smile, but her eyes were icy. This is absolutely ridiculous. My stepdaughters are perfectly well cared for, as anyone can see. Even so, we need to follow protocol, Viola interjected. The order allows us to talk to the children in a neutral environment, without their presence. Victor, Helena turned to her husband, her tone now almost pleading. Are you going to allow this absurdity? That our daughters be subjected to a police interrogation, as if we were criminals? Victor looked at Helena, then at Viola and the police officers. If there are concerns about my daughter's well-being, I want them thoroughly investigated. I'm going to call the girls in. As he climbed the stairs, Helena attempted one last maneuver. This is harassment pure and simple. You're being manipulated by an obsessive teacher who was fired for inappropriate behavior. I'll speak to my lawyers immediately. The lady will have every opportunity to defend herself, the police officer replied calmly. For now, our priority is the children. When Victor returned with the twins, both seemed frightened and confused. Olivia cast an apprehensive glance at Helena, as if seeking instructions on how to act. Chiara remained partially hidden behind her father, her wide eyes fixed on the strangers. Hello, Olivia Chiara, Viola said gently, kneeling down to be at the girl's level. My name is Viola. I'm a social worker. Do you know what that means? Olivia shook her head negatively, still glancing nervously at Helena. It means that my job is to ensure that all children are safe and happy in their homes, Viola explained. I'd like to chat with you for a bit, if that's all right. They're not going anywhere without me, Helena interrupted sharply. Actually, Ms. Allianz, the court order is clear, the officer explained. The minors will be interviewed without your presence. Mr. Allianz can accompany them if the children feel more comfortable that way. Helena realized she was losing control of the situation. Her gaze met Olivia's, conveying a silent message that the girl immediately understood. Don't say anything. But then, something unexpected happened. Chiara, who hadn't spoken for weeks, stepped forward, emerging from behind her father. Her eyes met Helena's, not with fear as usual, but with a surprising determination for such a young child. And then, to the shock of everyone present, she spoke. A single word, almost a whisper, but clear enough for everyone to hear. He arrives. The silence that followed that single word was absolute. Helena visibly paled, her eyes fixed on Chiara with a mixture of shock and contained fury. Victor felt as if the world had momentarily stopped, while Viola and the police officers exchanged meaningful glances. "Chiara?" Victor knelt beside his daughter, his voice gentle and encouraging. "Is there anything else you'd like to say, darling?" The girl looked at her father, then at Viola, and finally at her sister. Olivia, as if understanding that a crucial moment had arrived, nodded almost imperceptibly. "I don't want to." "Go back to the closet," Chiara whispered, her voice hoarse from prolonged disuse. "Please don't let her lock us in again." Victor felt as if he had been punched. The recordings, Anna's accounts, it was all true, and worse than he had imagined. Helena took a step forward, her smile now visibly forced. "Chiara, darling, what are you talking about? Nobody locks anyone in this house. You must be confusing it with some nightmare you had." "It's not a nightmare," Chiara insisted, her voice growing stronger with each word. "It's real. The dark closet, the wet towels, going without food when we make mistakes, sweeping the sidewalk barefoot, sleeping on the floor when we don't finish our chores." "That's absurd," Helena interrupted, her voice taking on a sharp tone. "Victor, you can't be taking seriously the delusions of a clearly disturbed child. I've explained this several times. Chiara has had serious emotional problems since her mother's death." Olivia, who had been silent until then, stepped forward, positioning herself beside her sister. "It's not delusions. It's true. Helena calls us number one and number two. She says we're an expensive burden. She burned our drawings of Mom." One of the police officers discreetly took notes, while Viola maintained a professional expression, although her eyes revealed compassion for the girls. "I think we need to continue this conversation in a more appropriate setting," she finally said. "The girls clearly have a lot to say, and they should feel safe to do so." "They're not going anywhere," Helena declared, her mask of cordiality now completely abandoned. "This is my house. These are my husband's daughters, and you have no right to invade our privacy based on fanciful accusations." The older police officer stepped forward. "Ms. Allianz, we have a court order. You can come with us to the police station voluntarily to provide clarification, or we can do it in a less pleasant way." Helena looked around like a cornered animal until her eyes landed on Victor. "You planned this?" she accused, the venom in her voice barely contained. "After everything I've done for you, for these ungrateful girls. What you did was abuse defenseless children who were under your care," Victor replied, his voice calm but firm. "Children who had lost their mother and trusted you." Before Helena could answer, the front door opened again. Marco entered, accompanied by another man whom Victor did not recognize. "Excuse the intrusion," Marco said, presenting his press credentials. "I'm Marco Carmen, an investigative reporter, and this is Raphael Lehman, a lawyer specializing in children's rights." Helena let out a nervous laugh. "Perfect. The merry-go-round is complete now. The obsessive teacher, the spiteful governess, the meddling social worker, and now the sensationalist journalist and the opportunistic lawyer." Raphael remained calm in the face of the provocation. "Ms. Allianz, I represent the children Olivia and Chiara Allianz in a protective order. We have substantial evidence of systematic psychological abuse, including the recordings made by Ms. Anna, the drawings documented by teacher Rose, and now the direct testimony of the girls themselves. Illegal recordings, children's drawings, and the babbling of manipulated children," Helena retorted. "None of that will hold up in court. Besides these elements," Raphael continued unperturbed, "Mr. Marco Carmen discovered certain irregularities in his financial management of the charity events he organizes. Apparently, a large portion of the funds raised never reached the institutions declared as beneficiaries." For the first time, Helena seemed genuinely alarmed. "This is slander, pure defamation. I have here," Marco interjected, statements from 3 charities stating that they never received the donations advertised in their name. I also have bank records showing transfers of the funds raised to personal accounts. The report will be published tomorrow, but I thought the police should be aware of these facts now. Helena's face had lost all color. Her gaze wavered between those present, calculating her options, which were rapidly dwindling. "Victor," she tried one last time, her tone suddenly pleading, "you're not going to allow this, are you? Think of the scandal, what this will do to your reputation, to your business." Victor looked at his daughters, truly looked at them, perhaps for the first time in months. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also a glimmer of hope. He saw the traces of the pain they had silently endured, while he lost himself in his own grief and work. "My only concern now is my daughters," he replied firmly. "If that means facing a scandal, so be it." An hour later, the Allianz mansion had transformed into a surreal scene. Helena was taken away for questioning. Not handcuffed, but visibly shaken. Before leaving, she cast one last glance at the twins, not of regret or remorse, but of cold anger, as if blaming them for her downfall. Victor, following Raphael and Viola's advice, agreed that it would be best for the girls to stay temporarily in a neutral location while the situation was resolved. La Horizonte, a shelter specializing in children with trauma, offered adequate facilities and trained professionals to provide the necessary psychological support. "They can't simply return to their routine in the mansion as if nothing happened," Raphael explained gently. "The environment is fraught with traumatic memories. Furthermore, a complete psychological evaluation is crucial to document the damage and plan the appropriate treatment." Although the separation was painful, Victor understood that it was the most responsible decision. "For how long?" he asked, while helping the girls pack a small bag with clothes and personal belongings. "A few weeks, probably," Viola replied. "It will depend on the psychologist's assessment and the progress of the legal process." Victor knelt before his daughters. "You understand that this is temporary, right? It's just to make sure you're both okay, really okay, before we start living together again." Olivia nodded solemnly. "Will we be able to visit you?" "Of course," Victor assured her, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll visit you every day, and when the doctors allow, you can come see me too." "And what about Professor Rose?" Chiara asked, her voice still hesitant, as if she were relearning how to use it. "Is she going to visit us too?" The mention of the teacher surprised Victor. "If you'd like, I'm sure she'd be happy to visit." The twins exchanged a look that contained years of silent communication. Before Chiara continued, she was the only one who saw. "What did you see, darling?" "That we were afraid. That we needed help." Victor's heart ached at the simplicity of that truth. While he had been blind to his own daughter's suffering, a stranger had seen beyond appearances, beyond the perfect facade Helena had built. That night, after the girls left with Viola for La Horizonte, Victor found himself alone in the enormous mansion that had never seemed so empty. Rose, Marco, Raphael, and Anna had met with him briefly to discuss the next steps, but now they were all gone, leaving him with his thoughts and his guilt. Walking through the silent rooms, Victor arrived at the twins' bedroom. Everything seemed strangely impersonal. No toys out of place, no drawings on the walls, nothing to suggest that 2 7-year-olds lived there. It was a showroom, not a space inhabited by real children. Sitting on the edge of one of the perfectly made beds, Victor allowed the tears he had held back all day to finally fall. He cried for his daughters, for the lost time, for the pain he hadn't noticed, for the absence he had allowed in their lives. When he finally composed himself, he made a decision. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Rose? It's Victor Allianz. I know it's late, but I'd like to ask for your help. I don't know how to rebuild my daughters' lives after all this. I don't even know where to begin." On the other end of the line, Rose hesitated for only a moment. "It starts with acknowledging that they need help. You've already taken that step." "It's not enough," Victor admitted. "I've failed them in so many ways." "The important thing is that you're here now," Rose replied gently. "And yes, I'll help in any way I can." The following morning, Marco's story made the front page of the capital's main newspaper. Socialite accused of child abuse and fraud at charity events. The story detailed not only the abuse suffered by the twins, but also the embezzlement scheme that Helena had orchestrated for years. using her image as a devoted stepmother and generous philanthropist as a front for illicit enrichment. The case quickly gained national attention. Other victims of Helena began to come forward. Former employees who had been intimidated into silence, charities that had questioned donations, not received only to be threatened with lawsuits, even former partners who reported similar manipulative behavior. Meanwhile, at La Horizonte, the twins began their long recovery process. Chiara, although she had regained her speech, still struggled with episodes of mutism when she felt threatened or insecure. Olivia, in turn, showed signs of severe anxiety and a highly developed sense of responsibility for her sister. During the visits, Victor noticed small changes. Gradually, smiles became more frequent, conversations more natural. The therapy sessions, initially difficult, began to yield visible progress. Guy, reinstated to her position at the school after the truth came out, visited the girls regularly, bringing books, games, and, most importantly, a consistent and affectionate presence. On one of these visits, Chiara finally asked something that clearly bothered her. "Why, didn't you give up, even when everyone told you were wrong?" Rose considered the question with the seriousness the child deserved. "Because I saw something in both of your eyes. Something that told me you needed help, even when you couldn't ask for it with words." "We were invisible to everyone," Olivia commented. "Except you." "They were never invisible," Rose corrected gently. "They were just surrounded by people who chose not to see." A week later, the preliminary hearing took place. Helena, represented by an elite team of lawyers, denied all the accusations, portraying herself as the victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by an obsessive teacher and an ungrateful husband. But the evidence was substantial, and the judge ruled that the case would go to trial. At the end of the hearing, as Helena was being escorted out, she passed close to Victor. "This isn't over," she murmured, her tone icy. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." Victor didn't answer. Helena's threats no longer had any power over him. His only concern was rebuilding a safe home for his daughters. A real home, not the gilded prison the mansion had become. 3 months had passed since the night Helena Allianz left the mansion, escorted by the police. Summer was coming to an end, giving way to the first signs of autumn, and with the changing seasons came profound transformations in the lives of the twins and everyone around them. The legal case was progressing with the characteristic slowness of the system, but with consistent progress. Helena's legal team had repeatedly tried to discredit the evidence, especially the recordings made by Anna, but the judge had decided to admit them, considering the seriousness of the accusations and the best interests of the children. Helena remained free on bail, but was forbidden from approaching the girls or Victor. Her social events, once attended by the capital's elite, were now boycotted. The influential friends who once surrounded her had almost completely disappeared, following the instinct for self-preservation common to circles of power. Meanwhile, at La Horizonte, Olivia and Chiara were slowly blossoming, like plants that finally receive light after a long period in darkness. The intensive therapy, combined with playful activities and a welcoming environment, was producing visible results. Chiara had started speaking regularly again, although she still had moments of hesitation and withdrawal. Olivia was beginning to learn that she didn't need to be her sister's constant protector, that she could sometimes just be a child. Victor, following the experts' recommendations, completely reorganized his professional life. He drastically reduced his travel, delegated responsibilities, and began working predominantly from home. Daily visits to La Horizonte became the center of his routine, moments in which he relearned how to be a father, rediscovering his daughters not as the obedient and silent children Helena had molded, but as vibrant individuals with distinct personalities. On a particularly significant afternoon, the twins received a special visit at the orphanage. Rose arrived accompanied by Agnes, the school principal who, after the truth came out, had felt deeply guilty for not having given more credence to the teacher's concerns. "Olivia, Chiara," Agnes began, visibly emotional. "I came personally to say that the school doors will always be open for you when you are ready to return. And also, to apologize for not having done more when it was necessary." Chiara looked at the principal with her serious, perceptive eyes. "You believed her lies." "Yes," Agnes admitted without trying to justify herself. And I deeply regret it. Many people believed her, Olivia interjected with wisdom beyond her years. Helena was very good at lying. Victor watched the interaction with a mixture of pride and admiration. His daughter's ability to process trauma, to articulate their feelings without bitterness, was a daily lesson for him. Rose, who had been quietly remaining in the background, finally spoke. "I brought something for you." She handed the girls a box of colored pencils and 2 sketchbooks. "I thought you might want to start your drawings again." The twins' eyes lit up. Since the traumatic episode in which Helena burned her notebooks, they hadn't resumed the activity they loved so much. "Can we draw now?" Chiara asked eagerly. "Of course," Victor replied, watching with emotion as his daughters opened their new notebooks, not out of fear of being punished for their personal expression, but with the simple joy of creation. While the girls drew, the adults spoke quietly about the future. The staff at La Horizonte had recommended that the twins could return home soon, provided certain conditions were met. "They will need a gradual transition," explained Theo, the psychologist in charge of the case. "Short visits to the house at first, then overnight stays until they feel safe to return permanently." "The mansion could be problematic," Rose observed carefully. "It's steeped in traumatic memories." Victor nodded. "I've thought about that. I'm looking for a new house. Something smaller, cozier, where we can really start over." Theo approved of the decision. "A new environment without negative associations will be beneficial. I also recommend that they maintain some consistency in the adult figures around them." Victor's gaze met Rose's briefly, a moment of silent recognition of the crucial role she had played and would continue to play in the girls' recovery. 2 weeks later, Victor found the perfect house, an airy building with a large garden close to a park, within convenient distance of both the school and the therapist's office, where the twins would continue to be treated after leaving La Horizonte. It was smaller than the mansion, more welcoming, without the intimidating pomp of the old residence. The girls' first visits to their new home were moments of cautious discovery. Victor had allowed them to choose everything for their rooms, from the wall colors to the furniture, from the curtains to the decorations. It was a symbolic way of giving them back control over their personal space, something Helena had systematically denied them. "Can I really choose any color?" Olivia asked, incredulous, looking at the paint catalogue. "Anyone," Victor confirmed. "It's your room, your choice." To her surprise, Olivia chose a vibrant shade of green for one of the walls, like the trees in spring, she explained, while the others would remain white. Chiara, on the other hand, opted for a serene blue, with small golden stars painted on the ceiling, so she could see the sky even when it was raining. With each visit, the girls brought something new home: a drawing for the refrigerator, a plant for the garden, a book for the bookshelf. Gradually, the empty space transformed into a home, filled not only with objects but with choices, positive memories, and laughter that finally felt natural. The first night they spent in their new house was almost a celebration. Rose had been invited to dinner, along with Anna and Viola, who continued to officially monitor the case. Marco sent flowers, unable to attend because he was covering a story out of town. Raphael, the lawyer, called to inform them of positive news about the legal case. The judge ruled that Helena must undergo a full psychological evaluation, he explained. "It's a significant victory for us." After dinner, while the adults chatted in the living room, the twins asked to show Rose something. They took her to the room they would share. They had insisted on staying together, at least for now, and gave her a drawing they had made together. It was a simple scene, 3 figures holding hands under a blue sky. One was clearly Rose, recognizable by her curly red hair. The other 2, Olivia and Chiara, had smiles that covered half their faces. In the corner of the page, a simple phrase written in Chiara's careful handwriting: "Thank you for seeing us." Rose felt tears welling up in her eyes. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely touched. "May I keep it?" "We made it for you," Olivia explained, "to put in your house." The simplicity of the gesture, the depth of feeling behind it, touched Rose deeply. In a world where so many had turned a blind eye to the suffering of those children, she had chosen to see, chosen to act, even when it meant risking her career and reputation. Weeks later, when the twins finally received permission to leave La Horizonte permanently, the transition occurred with surprising ease. The new home, built on foundations of respect and understanding, offered the safe environment they so desperately needed. Victor, though still learning to be the father his daughters deserved, had made remarkable progress. He attended family therapy sessions, read tirelessly about child development and trauma, and most importantly, was simply present, in the joyful moments and the difficult ones, in the small daily victories and the occasional setbacks. The girls' first week at school also went better than expected. Agnes had ensured that all the staff were prepared to welcome them back, without fanfare or special treatment, respecting their desire for normalcy. Rose, now not only their teacher, but a constant presence in their lives, served as a safe bridge between the protected world of home and the wider environment of school. There were, of course, difficult moments, nights when nightmares woke the twins screaming, days when Kiara briefly relapsed into her silence, situations in which Olivia showed signs of her persistent anxiety. But the difference was that now they were surrounded by attentive adults, able to recognize these signs and respond with appropriate support. On a particularly pleasant Saturday morning, about 6 months after Helena had left their lives, Victor was preparing breakfast while the girls played in the garden. Watching them through the kitchen window, he saw something that made him pause for a moment, his throat tight with emotion. Kiara, who had previously barely whispered, was running across the lawn laughing, chasing a butterfly, while Olivia, once so reserved and vigilant, twirled with her arms outstretched, her face turned towards the sun. The doorbell rang, interrupting her contemplation. It was Rose, coming for the painting class that had become a Saturday ritual, part therapy, part fun. "They're in the garden," Victor said, inviting her inside. "I haven't seen them this free since, well, maybe never." Rose smiled, watching the girls through the window. Children's resilience is extraordinary. With the right support, they can overcome experiences that would break many adults. "They wouldn't have been able to do it without you," Victor said sincerely. "None of us would have." Rose blushed slightly. In recent months, her relationship with Victor had evolved from mutual gratitude and respect to something deeper, more complex. They both navigated this new territory carefully, aware that any change in their dynamic would also affect the girls. "I did what anyone should do," she replied modestly. "No," Victor disagreed. "He did what few people would have the courage to do. He confronted an entire system, risked his career, his reputation. He saw beyond appearances when everyone else chose the convenience of not seeing." Before Rose could answer, the twins rushed in, filling the kitchen with their renewed energy. "Rose! You're here!" Kiara exclaimed, hugging her impetuously. "Shall we paint in the garden today?" Olivia asked, already pulling out the art supplies that had been prepared the day before. "If your father agrees," Rose replied, looking at Victor with a knowing smile. "The garden looks perfect for a day like today," he agreed. "I'll take breakfast there too." While the twins ran back to the garden, enthusiastically carrying their painting supplies, Victor and Rose lingered in the kitchen for a moment. "Do you know what Olivia told me yesterday?" Victor commented. "She said, 'Dad, I think we're really happy, not just pretending.'" Rose felt her eyes welling up with tears. "That's all that matters in the end. That they can be genuinely happy, not just perform happiness to survive." Outside, the twins had set up their materials under the gentle shade of a tree. Chiara was already scribbling something in her notebook, while Olivia meticulously organized the pencils by color, not out of fear of punishment now, but for the simple pleasure of order. "I think we should join them," Rose suggested, walking toward the back door. Victor nodded, following her with the breakfast tray. Watching Rose interact with her daughters, her natural gentleness, the way she genuinely listened to them, the respect she showed for their individuality, he felt a wave of gratitude and something more, something he had only recently allowed himself to acknowledge. The case against Helena was proceeding through the judicial system. Investigations into the financial irregularities had revealed a scheme even more extensive than initially suspected. The trial would be long and possibly painful, eventually requiring the twins to testify, but that was a matter for another day. Today, on this perfect sunny Saturday, there was only this: two girls rediscovering the joy of simply existing without fear, a father relearning how to be truly present, and a woman whose moral courage had initiated the transformation they were now witnessing. As she sat on the grass between Olivia and Chiara, accepting the paintbrush they offered her as if it were the greatest of gifts, Rose reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them there, on how a simple act, that of truly seeing beyond appearances, of refusing to ignore signs of suffering, could trigger a cascade of changes that altered lives forever. Chiara held up her notebook, showing the drawing she had just begun, a portrait of the new family they had become, imperfect, still healing but genuine in their connection. "What do you think?" Rose asked, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. Rose looked at the drawing, at Chiara, at Olivia and Victor, this new constellation of people united not by blood or obligation, but by choice, courage and mutual care. "I think it's the perfect beginning to a very beautiful story," she replied, knowing in her heart that it was true. And under the blue sky of that Saturday morning, surrounded by the aroma of fresh coffee and paints, the four continued to paint, not only in their notebooks, but on the canvases of their own lives, a new story, where fear had been replaced by hope, silence by expression, and loneliness by belonging. A story that, like all the best stories, didn't exactly have an ending, but a continuous evolution of possibilities, a permanent unfolding towards the light. 3 years had passed since that Saturday morning in the garden, a time that invisible weaver had worked delicately, transforming wounds into scars, marks that, although they remained, no longer caused sharp pain with each touch. Olivia and Chiara, now 10 years old, ran down the stairs of the house, their backpacks swinging from their shoulders. Their hair, which now grew freely according to their own choice, was braided in different ways. Olivia preferring a single side braid, Chiara opting for 2 symmetrical braids that framed her face. Small aesthetic choices that symbolized something profound, the freedom to be distinct individuals, not reflections of each other. "Dad." "Rose, we're going to be late for the ceremony," Olivia called, her voice echoing through the cozy house that now truly felt like home. Victor appeared in the room adjusting his tie. "We still have 40 minutes, little one. Breathe." Chiara laughed, a crystalline sound that still surprised everyone who had known the girl during her days of traumatic silence. "She's excited, because she's going to receive the award for Best Science Project. Isn't that right, Olivia?" Olivia blushed slightly. "It's not certain that I'm going to win." "It's practically a certainty," Rose interjected, descending the stairs in a simple but elegant navy blue dress. "Your volcano functioning with a real chemical reaction was impressive, and your research on geological processes was at the level of a high school student." The pride on Victor's face was palpable as he watched his daughters. It wasn't just because of their academic potential, but because of what they represented. Children who, despite early trauma, had found a path to healing, to confidence, to genuine joy. The trial against Helena had been long and at times painful. It had lasted almost a year, with postponements, legal maneuvers, and the constant battle between Helena's legal team and the prosecution, supported by Raphael's expert testimony. The twins had had to testify, an experience they deeply feared, but which they faced with surprising courage. Chiara, who had previously been unable to speak in Helena's presence, had found her voice in that courtroom. With the room specially prepared to receive the child's testimony, she described in simple but devastatingly precise terms the punishments in the dark closet, the food deprivation, the cruel words whispered when no one else could hear. "She called us number 1 and number 2, Chiara had said, her small voice amplified by the microphone. "She said we weren't special, just a job she had to do to stay with our father." Olivia's testimony confirmed every word her sister had said, adding details about how Helena systematically isolated them, controlling every aspect of their lives. "She said that if we told anyone, no one would believe us, that everyone would think we were liars." The court also heard from Anna, whose recording had been crucial to the case, and several other witnesses, from temporary staff at the mansion to child abuse experts who analyzed the girl's drawings and behavior. Finally, after months of legal battle, Helena was convicted, not only for the psychological abuse of the twins, but also for the financial fraud uncovered by Marco. The sentence included imprisonment and financial compensation, part of which was earmarked for funds to treat children who are victims of similar abuse. But for the twins, The real victory wasn't in punishing Helena. It was in the life they had rebuilt, day after day, moment after moment. A life where they could be real children, not just survivors in constant self-preservation mode. Now, 3 years later, they were heading to the awards ceremony for the regional science fair, where both had presented projects. Olivia with her chemical volcano, Chiara with a complex model of aquatic ecosystems. "Remember," Victor said as they got into the car, "regardless of who wins any award today, I'm already incredibly proud of you two." Rose, sitting beside her, smiled. "And if you get nervous during the ceremony, remember that breathing technique we practiced." The relationship between Rose and Victor had evolved gradually, with the caution of two adults aware of their responsibility towards the children involved. It had begun as a partnership focused on the well-being of the twins, transformed into a deep friendship, and eventually into something more. It was only the previous year, after carefully consulting the opinions of Olivia and Chiara, who, to no one's surprise, were enthusiastically supportive, that Rose had moved into the house. The wedding, an intimate ceremony in the same garden where so many Saturdays had been dedicated to painting and restoration, had taken place just 6 months earlier. At school, Olivia and Chiara had transformed. Olivia, once withdrawn and hypervigilant, was now an active student, frequently raising her hand to answer questions, participating in the science club, and even occasionally in school theatre. Chiara, who had carried the burden of selective mutism, had discovered a passion for writing and music, channeling her experiences into poems and songs that surprised with their depth. Both still attended therapy, although less regularly. Occasionally, specific situations still triggered anxiety reactions. Olivia became particularly agitated in small, dark spaces, while Chiara still struggled with moments of acute insecurity when she felt she had made mistakes. But these reactions diminished over time, replaced by healthy coping mechanisms they had learned to develop. Upon arriving at the school for the ceremony, they were greeted by Agnes, whose relationship with the family had strengthened considerably in the preceding years. After overcoming her initial guilt for not having given more credence to Rose's concerns, she had become a staunch ally in creating more robust school policies to identify and prevent child abuse. "The stars of the night have arrived," Agnes exclaimed, hugging the twins. The judges were impressed with their projects, and Chiara's panel on how art helped her emotional recovery. "Well, it moved a lot of people." The twins smiled, accepting the compliment without the painful embarrassment they previously felt when receiving any positive attention. Inside the auditorium, they found reserved seats in the front rows. As the space filled, familiar faces began to appear. Viola, still formally involved as the family's social worker, though now more as a friend. Marco, whose series of reports on the case had won an investigative journalism award and triggered a wider investigation into abuse in elite families. Raphael, who in addition to legally representing the twins, had become a consultant for reforms in child protection laws. And surprisingly, Anna, who had found a new purpose as a children's rights advocate, frequently speaking at schools and community centers about the importance of recognizing signs of abuse. "Look, Theo came too," Chiara whispered to Olivia, pointing to the psychologist who had accompanied them during their months at La Horizonte and continued as an occasional consultant afterward. That support network, formed in the midst of the crisis, had solidified into something that went beyond their original professional roles. They were people united not only by the specific case of the twins, but by a shared vision of child protection and community responsibility. The ceremony began promptly. Projects from various categories were awarded, each representing the creative and intellectual potential of the children in the region. When the time came for the natural sciences category, in which Olivia was registered, the tension was palpable. And the Excellence in Natural Sciences Award goes to Olivia Allianz for the project Volcanic Processes and Geological Impacts. Applause echoed through the auditorium. Victor and Rose exchanged emotional glances, while Chiara hugged her sister with genuine enthusiasm, without a trace of envy. "Go for it, Livy. You deserve it." Olivia stepped onto the stage, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear now, but from positive emotion. Upon receiving the trophy, she looked at the audience and, Instead of simply thanking them and leaving as she had planned, she approached the microphone. "Thank you for this award," she began, her voice small but firm. "I want to thank my family, my father and Rose, who supported me in every experiment, even when I was making a mess in the kitchen." A wave of affectionate laughter swept through the audience. "And especially to my sister Chiara, who always believed in me even when it was hard to believe in anything good." An understanding silence settled in. Although the details of the twins' case weren't widely discussed at the school, the community knew enough to understand the depth of that simple statement. "I've discovered that volcanoes are a bit like people," Olivia continued, surprising everyone with her unexpected eloquence. "Sometimes too much pressure builds up beneath the surface, and when it finally explodes, it can seem destructive. But then comes new life, new beginnings. That's how nature renews itself." Victor couldn't hold back his tears as he listened to his daughter's innocent yet profoundly revealing metaphor. Rose squeezed his hand, equally moved. Olivia's words, though phrased in simple scientific terms, were a perfect description of the healing journey they had taken together. Later in the ceremony, when Chiara received an honorable mention for her project on ecosystems, she took to the stage with the same quiet confidence she had been developing. Her acceptance speech was briefer, more poetic, reflecting the natural difference between the sisters' personalities, something that was now celebrated, not suppressed. After the ceremony, there was a small reception in the schoolyard. While the twins mingled with their classmates, receiving congratulations and admiring other projects, Victor, Rose, and their friends watched from a distance. "Looking at them now, it would be hard to imagine everything they went through," commented Viola, who had followed the entire process from the first tense moments at the Allianz mansion. "Children are incredibly resilient," Theo replied. "But make no mistake, the healing work continues even when it's not visible. They will carry this experience forever, but not as a sentence, as part of who they are." Marco, who had become a frequent visitor to the family home, nodded in agreement. What was most impressive was how this whole horrible situation triggered positive changes beyond itself. My series of reports led to a review of child protection protocols in private schools. Raphael managed to move forward with legal reforms that had been stalled for years. "And don't forget about La Horizonte," Anna added. With part of the compensation that Victor directed there, they were able to expand their facilities. They are now caring for twice as many traumatized children. Rose watched the twins from a distance, feeling that familiar mix of pride and a slight tightness in her chest that never completely disappeared. No matter how recovered they were, no matter how happy they were now, there would always be a part of her that remembered those two little girls trembling on the sidewalk, sweeping barefoot on a cold morning. "In the end, what made the difference was simply not looking away," she said softly. "How many Olivias and Chiaras are out there, waiting for someone to simply refuse to ignore the signs?" Victor put his arm around Rose's shoulders. "That's why your work is so important. All of you." He looked at the group, the journalist, the social worker, the lawyer, the former governess, the psychologist. "You are the safety net that keeps children from falling into the abyss." The conversation was interrupted by the twins, who came running towards them, carrying their awards and radiating an almost tangible energy. "Can we celebrate with pizza?" Chiara asked, her eyes sparkling with that perfect combination of childlike hope and confidence that her request would be seriously considered. "And maybe ice cream afterwards?" Olivia added, adopting that strategically pleading expression that all children seem to master instinctively. Victor laughed. "I think science champions deserve pizza and ice cream. What do you think, Rose?" "Absolutely," Rose agreed with a smile. "In fact, I think everyone here should join us in celebrating." The proposal was received with general enthusiasm. As they headed towards their cars, discussing details about the restaurant, Victor watched his daughters walking a few steps ahead, heads together, chatting animatedly about some shared news. She thought about how different they were now, not only from the traumatized children they had been under Helena's control, but also different from each other. Olivia, with her passion for exact sciences, her meticulous organization that was now a choice, not an imposition. Chiara, with her artistic sensibility, her talent for words, her way of finding beauty in unexpected places. He remembered a moment, a few months earlier, when he had found Chiara's notebook open on the table. Inside was a simple poem, written in the careful handwriting she had been perfecting. There are boxes that trap, and boxes that set you free. I learned the difference between walls that suffocate and walls that protect. Those lines had struck him with the force of their simplicity and depth. His 10-year-old daughter, transforming trauma into art, finding words to express what many adults could never articulate. Now, in the noisy pizzeria, surrounded by friends who had become family, Victor watched his daughters interacting naturally with the world around them, laughing, debating, sometimes disagreeing, always authentic. He realized that the greatest gift they had received was not Helena's absence, but the constant presence of people who truly saw them, who recognized their individuality, who respected their voices. Rose, sitting beside her, seemed to read her thoughts. "They're really okay, aren't they?" she whispered, as the twins engaged Marco and Raphael in a complex explanation about a book they had both recently read, but interpreted in completely different ways. "They're more than fine," Victor replied. "They're completely fulfilled, whole." Later that evening, after the celebration, when all the guests had left and the twins had finally fallen asleep, their trophies carefully placed on the shelves in their rooms, Victor and Rose sat on the back porch, contemplating the garden they had cultivated together over the past few years. "I received an interesting email today," Rose commented, sipping her tea. "Agnes is proposing to implement a training program for teachers focused on the early identification of signs of abuse and trauma. She wants me to coordinate it. Will you accept?" Victor asked, even though he already knew the answer. Rose nodded. "How could I not accept? If a program like this had existed 5 years ago, maybe we would have identified the signs sooner. Maybe." "Don't torture yourself with maybes," Victor interrupted gently. "You acted as soon as you realized. You faced obstacles that would have made many give up. The girls are where they are today because of that." "We all played our parts," Rose replied. "Anna had the courage to record the evidence even under threat. Marco persisted in the investigation when doors were closing. Viola navigated the bureaucratic system with unwavering determination. And you were the first to see," Victor concluded. "The first to truly see beyond the facade." They remained silent for a few minutes, appreciating the quiet of the night and the comfort of each other's presence. Eventually Rose spoke again, her voice carrying a note of reflection. "You know what impresses me most about the girls? It's not just that they survived, but how they maintained their capacity to trust, to love, to connect. After everything Helena tried to take away from them, their individuality, their voice, their connection with each other, they not only recovered that, but strengthened it." Victor agreed. It's like Chiara said in that poem, they learned the difference between walls that suffocate and walls that protect. "Did you read her new poem?" Rose asked. "The one she wrote for the library's literary contest?" Victor shook his head. "Not yet. She's keeping it a secret until the results come in." Rose smiled. "She showed it to me yesterday, asking for my opinion. I can't reveal the content, obviously, but I can say that it's about transformation, about how some people come into our lives to hurt us, others to heal us, and how, in the end, we are the ones who choose what to do with these experiences." Profound for a 10-year-old girl. "She lived more in her first 10 years than many do in a whole lifetime," Rose observed. "They both lived, and that's the real victory, isn't it? May they transform this experience into wisdom, not bitterness." Inside the house, a faint sound caught their attention. The familiar sound of small footsteps in the hallway, followed by the soft creak of Chiara's bedroom door opening and closing again. It was a pattern they knew well. Olivia checking on her sister during the night, a habit that persisted from the times when mutual protection was their only defense. "I think some things will never completely change," Victor commented, his voice a mixture of affection and a hint of sadness. "They don't need to," Rose replied. "That bond between them, forged in the worst moments, is now a source of strength. It's no longer about survival. It's about love." The years had brought a deeper understanding to everyone. Victor had learned that being a father went far beyond providing materially. It was about constant presence, genuine attention, and respect for developing individualities. Rose had discovered that teaching transcended academic content. It was about seeing the student as a whole person, with complex histories that shaped their learning. As for the twins, their journey was far from over. There would still be challenges ahead, adolescence with its own complexities, moments when the past would resurface in unexpected triggers, decisions about how and when to share their story with new friends and, eventually, partners. But on that quiet night, with scientific trophies gleaming on shelves in cozy rooms, with poems transforming pain into beauty, with family ties strengthened not by blood, but by the conscious choice to stay, support, and love, on that night, the future seemed not only secure but infinitely promising. Somewhere in the city, Helena Alliance was serving her sentence, a shadow growing ever more distant in the life the twins were building. Her influence, once so dominant, diminished with each new moment of genuine joy, each celebrated achievement, each expression free from fear. The true victory lay not in punishments or retributions. It lay in the patient, daily rebuilding of lives that now flourished under proper care, like plants that, after surviving adverse conditions, finally find fertile soil, abundant water, and enough light to grow to the fullness of their nature. The following morning, as on so many other mornings since they had become a family, Rose would wake up to find a drawing slipped under her bedroom door, sometimes by Olivia, sometimes by Chiara, sometimes by both. This one depicted 4 figures holding hands under a starry sky, with a single phrase written in careful handwriting, alternating between Olivia's precise script and Chiara's more artistic style. "Thank you for teaching us the difference between surviving and living." And in that simple phrase would be contained the entire essence of their collective journey, from a past of shadows to a present of possibilities, from a world where children were silenced to one where their voices were not only heard, but celebrated in all their unique and precious authenticity. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Olivia and Chiara's journey has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional experience, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to the left. If this narrative moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Share your own experiences in the comments. Your voice is important to our community. After all, as we learned from Rose, sometimes all we need is someone who truly sees us. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.